Donald Trump's first year in office has been unusual, and this week's indictments of 3 of his former aides mark the earliest charges against the president's aides in modern history. But this is not the first White House to struggle with these kinds of issues. Presidents under the weight of criminal investigation include Clinton, Reagan, and Nixon, who faced long probes testing their focus, their respect for the rule of law, and their ability to govern. One NBC journalist covered each of those national tests.
People have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
The president has ignored an order from the Federal Appeals Court. He has fired the special Watergate prosecutor Archibald Cox. He has accepted the resignation of Attorney General Elliot Richardson, and he has forced the resignation of Deputy Attorney General William Ruckelshaus. In view of all that, don't you expect now that impeachment proceedings against the president will begin in the House of Representatives?
Well, I'm not going to lie about that. I didn't make a mistake.
The president himself must be asking tonight, is there any end to this Iranian quagmire? It seems to be getting deeper by the hour.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
The trial of the President of the United States will begin Thursday in the U.S. Senate.
The investigation of a president, let alone a trial, can be a source of both patriotic trauma and civic pride. Trauma, because when you love your country, you recoil from the idea its leader could have broken laws he swore to uphold. Pride, because we are a nation of laws intended to hold everyone to account. When the accountability does kick in, it can provide major pressure on a White House.
The oppressive developments in the Middle East forced the president to first cancel a speech and then postpone a news conference that would have dealt almost exclusively with the president's problems here at home.
President Reagan tonight is under attack from both sides of the South Africa dispute for steps that he took today.
The terrorist campaign against the United States is much more widespread, much more sophisticated.
To reflect on the broader historical context of this week's investigative developments, we are joined by a seasoned journalist you may know. Tom Brokaw served as NBC White House correspondent during Watergate, covered Iran-Contra, Whitewater, and 9 presidents through war and peace. He is, of course, now special correspondent for NBC News. Always great to have you.
Thank you, Ari. I'm going to put on my glasses because when I'm looking at those, I'm seeing my hair history during the whole last 25 years, and it's not a pretty sight.
It's got to be a trip to see yourself stitched in through the history. How does what happened this week change things?
Well, what I think it does is put everything at a different level of paralysis. I don't think we're completely paralyzed in Washington by any means. Today, the Republicans rolled out a tax overhaul. But it's in the context now of what else is going on behind closed doors. And there is a member of Congress, Democrat or Republican, who isn't thinking, what's this going to end up? How's this going to be different than what it was 2 days ago? And the White House, a lot of those staffers are thinking, is my name going to come up somewhere? Can I keep my attention on the business before us, or do I have to get a lawyer of some kind? This changes the equation. The White House, I mean, in Washington, the white-collar crime bar is riveted by what's going on, because we don't know what Mueller has on Papadopoulos, for example. We have a pretty good idea at this point about what he has on the other 2 who have been indicted, but what are they saying? So there's a lot of speculation, and that's going to be a big distraction as we go forward.
Right, and it's a distraction, as you point out, with a lot of question marks. I know you were just speaking to Senator McCain and talking about the role of facts and journalism in an era like this. Let's take a quick look at that.
The president has no use for the press. He's turned the country against us in many ways.
I think the role of the press is more important than ever before. I hate the press, okay? But the fact is, without a free press in this country, a pillar of democracy is destroyed.
Well, what did you think about that, and where that comes from?
Well, you know, I've known John a long time. In fact, we used to be quite close, always correct professionally, but we had a good personal relationship. And then when he ran against Obama, he took it out on the press, me included. I mean, he put us all in the deep freeze for a while. We broke out of the deep freeze in the last 9 months or so. And when he said, I hate the press, you know, that was his way of having a little sense of humor about it all. He also made a really important speech at the Naval Academy on Monday night about who we are and where we need to get to as a country. He thinks that we've gone back to the 1930s. We're talking about isolationism, and we're pretending like we don't lead the world. I recommend to everybody you Google that speech. You know, John McCain is at a crisis in his life personally and professionally. He has a very severe case of cancer at this point. He also sees this as his last hurrah as a senator. So I think he wants to speak truth to power wherever he is. And I think that we need that in Washington right now. I'm sure they're not happy with him at the White House. Here's a president who said he wasn't a hero in his eyes. He was a hero. And he's a man who's earned his right to say what he has been saying. And I think we'll probably be hearing more from him.
When you look at the revelations and the accountability in cases like Iran-Contra and Watergate, was it more about the system working because we have checks in the government, or in your view was an equally important factor a press that drove along those stories and stayed on them?
Well, I think in the end it was all the institutions of governance working in some form or another. The rule of law, the place of the Congress of the United States, equal branches of government, and the role of the press. But I always put Watergate in a different category. That was a criminal conspiracy run out of the Oval Office involving great payoffs and breaking into psychiatrist's office. It went on for years. The president's closest aides were sent to prison. We're not at that stage yet, I don't think, and I don't know whether we ever will be, but we always have to keep that in context. I'm always reluctant to say, well, it's going to be Watergate again. Watergate was unique. We have to keep that in mind. Right. But this is a different and a very potentially serious situation that we're in, and I don't think even Donald Trump's tweets can override the reality of that.
Right, and the tweets, as some have pointed out, are a new bottle for a very old wine, which is politicians clashing with the press. We went through some of the tape. This is the last, what did you say, the last hairstyle analysis we'll do here, but we have some final tape to show you. Take a look.
President Tom Brokaw of NBC News. Aren't your statements to that matter historically inaccurate or at least misleading?
It is difficult to find a proper way to meet the demands of the Congress.
How many times do I have to answer this question?
Can you just say
Russia
yes or no
is a ruse. Yeah, I know you have to get up and ask a question.
The unemployment rate is now 8.4. Everyone is saying it's going to go over 9%. Are we sliding from a recession into a depression?
The national figures hide the fact that some areas are truly depressed.
Can we ask you some more questions, sir?
It doesn't bother me at all, but I like real news, not fake news. Just fake news.
And that's fueled a lot of speculation that your Vice President Al Gore has moved down in the feeding chain somewhat. Do you take his advice or her advice when there's a big decision?
I'll take them both and then make the best decision I can.
Since you are attacking our news organization, can you give us a chance? You are attacking our news organization. Can you give us a chance to ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, can you state...
Your final thought for us on where history has landed on these
Well,
exchanges.
I think all reporters have to remember that they're there to get the facts and not to just get on television. And all reporters have to remind themselves from time to time that the country wants to know what they can find out, not what they believe is going on, but what in fact is happening. Yeah. That's the most important thing, Ari.
Tom Brokaw, thanks for coming on The Beat.
My pleasure.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.